Welcome to the Generous Business Owner Podcast, where business owners gain inspiration and encouragement to live a legacy, not just leave one. And now your hosts, Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. My name is Jeff Thomas, and we've got a very special guest with us today, Matt Nelson, who's the CEO of Polish Homes. Matt, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm excited to be here.
Well, whenever you hear a home builder on this podcast, you know they were probably referred by one of my co-hosts, Jeff Rutt. And so we give a shout out to Jeff Rutt. Thank you for introducing us and twisting Matt's arm to be on the podcast. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Matt, as you know, we usually start this podcast with just some history. Tell us about where you grew up, what your family was like, if there was faith, if there wasn't, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you bet. Well, first, I do need to make that connection to Jeff Rutt. I appreciate his passion for generosity and home building so much. And I met Jeff through a home building partnership group that we're in. And it's been a pleasure to know him, and he's challenged us in many great ways. And so, yeah, Jeff, we're thankful for you. Okay, well, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a suburb of Portland, Oregon. And I grew up in a very simple family. It was just me and my sister. And ultimately, through high school, ended up going to Biola University. And actually, as I've listened to your podcast, you've had a friend of mine on. His name was John Reinhart.
Oh, yeah.
So I know John and a couple of your other guests I've also, really enjoyed listening to. So Biola was a really pivotal experience for me. I had a hunger to learn about the Bible. Grew up in a public school system, and so didn't really get that training in theology. And at Biola was able to take a whole bunch of Bible classes, which I really enjoyed. So from Biola, I entered the medical sales environment for a while. And as I've been trying to think about how my story can potentially impact any listeners, it's humbling. First of all, it's I'm not sure I can, but I think there are certain themes, and one of those themes is that I feel like I have spent a long time trying to find my place in this world. I did not grow up with a particular career in mind. I didn't have a dream to be a firefighter, and my dad worked in a warehouse, and so I didn't particularly have a passion to go do that. And I struggled for years, actually, to find that place where I felt God would allow me to deploy my talents and gifts in a way that, number one, that could provide for my family and could glorify Him. So, once I was in the medical sales environment, I realized pretty quickly that this was just a job to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And it was not an environment for me to succeed in the long run. And so after about 3 years of that, being newly married in that time as well, we were living in Chicago then. We were moving back to Portland, and I decided to go to grad school at Portland State University. So that is where I studied an MBA program and studied business really for the first time, because I was a physical science major in undergrad. And while I was at Portland State, I really developed a passion for real estate finance. I took a class in real estate finance, and because I didn't have any business training in undergrad, I found myself very behind in that class, actually, not passing. And I had a hunger to learn, and so I reached out to the professor, and I just camped in his office, and he helped me get caught up in that class. And I remember that final exam I took that year was a really fun experience for me, because I had learned so much in the year, and it was an opportunity for me to really put on display everything I had learned. And it created a passion inside of me to follow that. And so that experience for me was, I felt like the Lord leading me into the real estate space after a time of really wandering and trying to figure out where I fit. And the hard part about this was 2008 and 9, which was a horrible time to be trying to get into real estate, especially real estate finance. So I ended up taking a job for a real estate developer, and we were trying to raise money for senior living communities. And again, horrible time to do that.
Right. The
Uh,
financial crisis.
yes, it was brutal. So
Literally,
I
no. All the spigots were closed, and you're trying
totally
to open them up.
great concept. Nobody's buying.
Right.
Was
Right.
was the experience for
Wow.
3 years actually.
Wow. Yeah.
So 3 years into it, the owner of the company shows up and says, "Matt, I can't pay you anymore." And that was a earth-shattering experience for me.
Mm.
I had never been unemployed before, and I was really in denial. And as I sit here today, the writing was all over the wall that this company was going to fail, and yet I chose to sit in that seat for probably a year or two longer than I should have, just because I was afraid to move. And this layoff actually turned out to be one of the most powerful experiences in my life, one of the most powerful faith building experiences in my life, because of the way God showed up to help. So when I was laid off, we went home that night, and I was talking with my wife, and we had one son already, and my mother-in-law happened to be over, and I was telling her that I just lost my job, and the first comment out of her mouth was, "Well, at least you're not pregnant."
Oh
And
boy.
Elsa and I looked at each other, and we were pregnant with baby number two. So it just feels like, kind of the world's falling apart around
Yeah.
me at this time. And the next 4 months turned out to be such a powerful experience, because we were so early in our marriage and our career, we didn't have much money. Things got pretty tight.
Yeah.
And every time we needed a little bit more money, an opportunity showed up. A door opened for me to do some contract work for someone. And God definitely provided through that moment. And eventually what happened is I was on this big networking kick, right? I was looking
Yeah.
for a job. Super important for me to get back into a stable position. And I was invited to an event in Portland called Brothers in Christ. So Brothers in Christ was just a pretty self-explanatory name, a bunch of men getting together to meet. And I had been told that there was a gentleman named Matt, actually we shared the same name, who I should talk to.
Mhm.
Except when I called Matt, he would never answer my phone calls, and I would leave messages, and he would never return them. So I just felt stuck, even though I knew that he may have a job opportunity for me. And so at this Brothers in Christ meeting, we're going around the room introducing ourselves, and Matt introduces himself. And immediately I'm like, oh man,
That's
I
the
need to
guy.
go. That's him. I
Yeah.
need to go meet Matt. And well, it turns out we're in a big room with, I don't know, probably 50 guys. Well, he gets up and leaves early. And I
Of
wasn't
course he
about to like
does.
chase him out of the room. So I thought, well, I'll just keep calling.
Right.
Well, the next day, I had an interview at a real estate firm downtown, and I was at a local coffee shop preparing for it. And uh, sure enough, Matt walks in the coffee shop.
No.
And I would not have known what he looked like if it wasn't for the day
Right.
before.
Right.
So I went up to Matt and I introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, Brad told me that I should talk with you." And long story short, that meeting led to a job for me roughly a month later.
Mm.
And as I look back on that, like there's just not a chance that I could have orchestrated any of it.
Yeah.
And this time in my life where I am searching for a place to fit and belong, I lose my job, and God through His own provision, essentially introduces me to someone who a month later gives me a job, and so I love to tell that story because I think God gets the credit for that, and here I am, I just turned 43. And that is the most powerful narrative that I tell myself over and over again. which is no matter what happens, no matter what circumstance we face, like there is no doubt in my mind that that God will provide and He will take care of us. And so, I mean that is kind of up until I got into real estate for the first time, and really it was the experience that started in that first job working in essentially for a private equity firm in Portland that has given me the experience to have the job I do today.
Hmm.
And as I look back, another thing that I think is so neat is just to connect the dots. You know, when you're in the moment, when you're in the situation or circumstance, you can't see exactly how God's going to use this. But as you look back, it's like, oh my gosh, right? There's not a chance I could be here if it wasn't for that and that, you know, all these other things that have led up to it. And I'm so thankful for that. And you know, there is no way I could be doing what I'm doing today if it didn't start with that first job that I got from that.
I think that's really cool that you look back on that, because I think a lot of people would, frankly, blow past that. I know that was painful experience for you, and it is for a lot of people. Like we talked before we started recording about, we always try to have somebody share the struggle on the way on
Hmm,
their journey, because we all have a struggle. If you haven't had one, one's coming. I mean, it's just part of life.
for sure.
And unfortunately, sometimes we learn the most in those situations, or fortunately, I guess. But even though we're not rooting for those to happen, we tend to learn the most. And I think one of the things I like about you sharing that story is it takes reflection and gratitude kind of to tell
Mhm,
that story.
mhm.
Because I think sometimes when I'm get through a pit, I really just don't even want to even look backwards and
It's
think
hard.
about it that much. I'm so happy to
Yeah,
be out of it that
yeah,
I don't maybe take the time I need to go back and reflect and be grateful
yeah.
for God's provision in that. So thank you for sharing that. But okay, so we've clawed out of the pit. We got this private equity job. I already gave the intro for what the job is now, but fill in the timeline there for us a little bit.
Yeah, you bet. So the job in private equity was a stretch for me, and I was on a very steep learning curve. And so I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but I'm just going to do it. Like I was on Google, right, trying to figure out how to do this job. And I'm searching
Yeah.
like what are debits and credits, and doing essentially trying to gather all the information I needed in order to perform well. And
Mhm.
because I didn't have it walking into it,
Yeah.
and I think that is another theme that has helped me be successful, is just a constant desire to reinvent myself. I love to learn. I'm also starting from a position that, like, I know I don't have it all together. I know that I need help, and that hunger to grow and learn has really been, I feel like, the main catalyst for any career success that I've had. And so as I was on Google trying to figure out that job, it led to another within the same firm that got me into the home building space,
Mm.
and it was a smaller company at the time uh, than we do today. But we were building homes and apartments, and I spent 4 years essentially as a CFO slash controller of a small company. So really in the accounting and the financial forecasting of that business, and that proved to be one of those stepping stones that God provided to allow me to be where I am today. And so I worked there. I'm really thankful for that job. It was pivotal in my growth. And during that time, when I was working for that home builder in Portland, I ran into a high school friend whose name is Dan Polish. And Dan is obviously one of the sons of our founder, Dennis Polish. And at that time, they were looking for some help in finance and accounting, and he knew that I was in that. And so we connected. And initially, they were looking for a controller, and I realized that that's not what I wanted to do full time.
Right.
I was more interested in the finance side of it. And then probably 2 months later, he calls me and he says that they're looking for a CFO, and I was very interested in that. So I went through the interviewing and recruiting process, and it came down to me and another gal. And that other gal had more experience than I did, and they ended up choosing her. So when they delivered that news to me, they followed up and said, "But we also want you." And I'm like, "Well, that's never happened to me before."
Right.
In a second position in an interview, and they wanted me. But I was up for a change, and my wife and I were up for an adventure, and so we decided to take that job, and we packed our family up and moved from Portland to Bend, Oregon, which is in Central Oregon, and we started the journey with Polish. And so I started as director of finance. That ironically, that CFO that they hired and set at me, she only lasted about a year and a half.
No.
And so I was able to step into that role. And then in about early 2020, our business was in transition as our founder was retiring. And the essentially the board at the time decided to place me as the first outside CEO of the company. And so I went from being CFO to CEO, and that's the role I'm in today.
How many years were you CFO or in that finance role? And
Yeah, you bet. That was well, I from director of finance to CFO, that was about 4 years in
yeah.
that seat. And I've been 3 years as CEO. And so yeah, I did not get into home building through the trades. A lot of people in our business come up that way. I came through the finance and accounting side of the business.
But that's even not a direct route because you were a physical science guy. I mean,
Oh.
and
Hey, I
then
told you I didn't know where I
I
fit.
there's something here. I think the way you said it is, you know, you have a desire to learn. That's obvious, and a desire to reinvent yourself. But I think there's something about just admitting when you don't know things. Like you told that story about going to your professor. You're like, I like this. I think that's really interesting that you were interested in a class in real estate and it was finance, but you didn't feel well equipped. Like even though you weren't academically doing well, you liked it.
Yeah.
So I think that's really there's something to learn there about it. Doesn't have to be a straight line, like to
Mhm.
follow like the passion I keep thinking about sort of how there's that old quip that you know God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called, you
So
know.
good.
And I feel like you're kind of like this living example of that. So, okay, so
Jeff,
now you get into the CEO job. Now that's a big job, right? You guys are
yeah.
building 500 homes a year, 135 employees. Uh, that's got to be that's a pretty intimidating jump, and that's your first CEO gig. So that had to be a little scary at first, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Your little quote that you just said is one that has been on my mind and heart big time.
Mm,
God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. Uh, and that has been my ultimate confidence. God has opened these doors in a way that I could not have orchestrated. And until he closes these doors, I'm going to show up every day and work my tail off, learn, grow, get better. Um, and that has been a major source of confidence for me because this is the hardest thing I've ever done. There are, I mean, the people challenges that we face on a daily basis, how to address the organizational health side of our business, the challenges of capital and keeping lot supply in front of us, and I mean the thing that I rely on is building a team of very talented people who hopefully with that same self-awareness that you're talking about
yeah.
recognize that we need to come together as a powerful team. No one of us can do this, but together we can accomplish a lot. And that is how I'm leading the company right now because I feel my own weaknesses. Like I know that they're there, and yet if we structure things properly, it's amazing what we'll be able to accomplish together.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of humility in the admitting what you don't know, hiring people, frankly, that are better at a bunch of things than we are at doing these things and cutting them
Yeah,
loose, and then praying like crazy for wisdom. It
for
feels
sure.
like every time I have a plan, it never works out, and every time God shows up, it like beautifully works out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just if I'll just get out of the way and listen to him, it's amazing. It's just the
Absolutely.
hubris of trying to take control. That's what gets me in trouble. So I think sort of
It's a mirage. Control.
Exactly. It's not true anyway. It's the mirage. Well said.
Yeah.
So now, but now I know you guys, you and Jeff Rutt met also. You have something in common, obviously with the home building business, but also with Homes for Hope. How do you can touch on that maybe for a minute, but also just thinking about generally the platform you have as the CEO of this pretty big home builder. How do you think about generosity? And you can tell that Homes for Hope story, or go
Yep.
take that wherever you like.
You bet. So, yes, I did not know about Homes for Hope until meeting Jeff Rutt probably 3 years ago at this point. And he is so passionate about Homes for Hope and then Hope International's mission that it certainly has rubbed off on us, here in Central Oregon. And so
Great.
we partnered with Homes for Hope for the first time this year. And essentially, so the cool thing about Homes for Hope is we get to do, as home builders, we get to do what we do every
The
day.
thing you know how to do. That's what I think is so cool. And again, not everybody knows that model. So we have a lot of listeners that have no idea what that is. So maybe just walk them through how that works.
You bet. So I mean, we build and sell 500 homes a year.
Right.
We have systems and processes and structures set up to do that, and we sell market value homes to the public. And so we're really good at that. We've got communities all over the Pacific Northwest. And so what Homes for Hope does is they challenge us to take one of those homes and to essentially partner with your trades and suppliers to spread the message about how the proceeds will be used, all with the goal of maximizing the number of proceeds that can be generated from this one home.
Got it.
And the proceeds that we generated, it was $750,000.
Amazing.
I know it still blows my mind. I mean,
what did the house sell for?
Yeah, it was, I think off the top of my head, I think it was about $1.2 million.
So okay. I mean, but that's pretty good. I mean, you had like two-thirds or whatever, more than that donated, right?
It's incredible. I mean, we have a community on the west side of Bend, which has been a really hot community. And we designated one of the lots for Homes for Hope. And then we started to spread the message. And when we talked to our suppliers and our trades, I was so shocked at their participation. I mean, let there be no confusion.
Give us your 30-second pitch. What was the pitch?
Well, so the proceeds that we generate go to Homes for Hope. I'm sorry, they go to Hope International. Hope International turns those funds into microfinance loans that get dispersed throughout the world and get essentially the money gets loaned out to entrepreneurs that then get to do their business, do their trade, do their craft, whatever they do. And I think the repayment rate on those loans is like 98%.
Exactly.
Jeff does a much better.
Recirculates. Yeah.
Yes, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so, when you get to empower people to go and to work and earn, that is way, way better than the toxic charity that Jeff Rutt talks about, which is when people just drop off money and leave.
Right.
So we really believe in the mission of Hope International, and through this one home we did in Bend, we were able to generate $750,000. And let there be no confusion, that's not our profit. It was the trades donating their labor.
No, 100%. You put it together and contributed.
Yep. And so that was a super special event.
That's really cool.
That we finished up last summer.
Yeah.
Now, I think one other comment just about generosity.
Yes.
I mean, I am still early in my career, and one of the things that I have tried really hard to do over the last 20 years is just to increase the amount of giving in my personal life on an annual basis. There was a professor at Biola that challenged me to think about giving that way, and I even kind of geek out about it. And I've got this little Excel sheet where I track my my tax return every year, and I can compare, how much of it I've given. And really my goal with my wife is that we just see that percentage increase every year. And we've been working at it for a while, and it's I think it's a great way just to measure like the direction of our heart, right? Is our heart getting more and more generous every year, as opposed to, as earnings go up, it's so tempting to to keep it, to increase your lifestyle, to make your barns bigger.
Yeah.
And I just remember that challenge from the professor at Biola, and that's one way, just practically in our personal life, that we have tried to be more and more generous every year.
Really like that. And I know you were telling me earlier that the way you keep track of that, it's actually pretty simple. It's on your tax return. So
So
just
simple.
yank the number off the tax return every year, and you track it kind of as a percentage of income,
Yeah,
right? So because you maybe if your income's fluctuating, you're just trying to,
totally.
as a percentage, keep it going. Oh, I think that's
Keep it
it.
growing. Yeah, the lump sum each year changes based on, what happened. But yeah, hopefully as a percentage, it's an indicator of, how we're
Yeah.
doing.
And I know, you've been in this job 4 years, 135 people. That's a lot to oversee. And I know you mentioned organizational health. So when you're thinking about the culture, because I think organizational health, I mean, I don't know. To me, culture is a little underrated. I think that,
Mm.
I do believe that culture eats strategy for breakfast. uh,
Yeah,
if you don't have a healthy culture, and the strategy almost doesn't matter to a certain extent. But and I think having a good culture is also generosity to
yeah,
to your employees. How do you think about culture and the generosity and the way
sure,
you treat your employees, that sort of thing?
sure. Um, well, I am a huge fan of Pat Lencioni. He has challenged me in many ways, and I love his ability to just call out like the brutally honest truth about a situation. And so, we have been working on the health of our team for several years, and it's amazing, in a sinful world as humans, it's so easy for us to fall into behaviors where we self promote and we self protect.
Yeah.
And when that kind of attitude shows up on a team, it's deadly.
Mm.
And, one of the things that I'm trying to do inside of our culture is to help people feel safe. And by that, I think there's some actual deep gospel roots in it. So first of all, when people come and join our company, they applied, they interviewed, they were hired, right? Massive, massive success and something to celebrate there. Now, once you get into our culture, instead of trying to prove your worth to us, instead of trying to signal smarts, instead of trying to, show everyone how good you are, I actually want you to take a step back and relax. Like, first of all, we already know that you're going to make mistakes. I know that because I'm the chief mistake maker. I make
Hmm.
them all. And so, like, once you come into our culture, we will be so much better if we own the fact that we are imperfect and set out on a course to get better together every day. And that is one of the hardest things for us to overcome, that self protection and self promoting that we are working really hard, because I think that it will change everything we do together. And so becoming, there's a really good book out there that talks about deliberately developmental organizations. And so this is an organization that sets out to get better every day, and you build processes and systems around it. They even talk about how having a backhand. So everyone knows that the backhand in the game of tennis is usually
Yeah.
your worst swing. Well, so the saying is, it's like, well, what's your backhand? What are you working on in order to get better? And everyone in a deliberately developmental organization knows your weaknesses. Weakness is viewed as an asset. Error is an opportunity. And so we're trying to shift the way we think about that in our culture, so that we can come together and do something that is really special, bigger than any one of us. And it's a battle. It is so hard.
Why is so I, we can it's a really strong statement to say self-promotion and self-protection is deadly. Why do you think that is? I mean, I know you're unpacking some of the advantages of sort of admitting your weaknesses, but why is that so deadly?
Well, uh, the first thing that comes to mind is, I think it was Brian Regan, his little skit on the me monster. I mean, we turn into me monsters, and we turn into people that, we tell ourselves stories, we distort reality, and all of a
Mm.
sudden, when you've got a team full of people doing that, uh, you're not talking about, I mean, trust is low,
Right.
you transparency is low.
Right.
And all those, I mean, Pat would tell you, right? The foundation of dysfunction in teams is lack of trust.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so, as we work as a team to build trust together, I think that, the roots in the gospel are, hey, we're sinners.
Right.
Like, we are sinners who need a savior. And as soon as you acknowledge that, then the whole world changes. And so
Mhm.
that's that progression. And I haven't, I mean, I don't, we are in a very liberal part of our nation in Oregon. And so, the conversation isn't always this transparent, but I think that, when we understand that we are sinners first and foremost, and that's how we show up on a team, it changes everything. And all of a sudden now I can care more about, um, letting the best idea,
Mm.
come to the surface instead of my own idea. Or I can care about having a servant's heart in the way we interact as team members. And I mean, I think the connections are many, but I think that, when we set out on a team to protect ourselves and to promote ourselves, then it is a deadly thing to a culture.
Man, I really I think this is your gift. If I can just say that is, you know, the way you share that story about being unemployed and how God got you through that period. And I just love this, that you love this course that you were bad at. Okay. Like I just think it's kind of amazing. It's like God keeps putting you in these situations where you feel like, hey, this sounds fun, but I
Yeah,
have no idea what I'm doing, you know? I think a lot of people I'm thinking of imposter syndrome and all kinds of things that people
sure.
struggle with. And I think this idea that, hey, if he put me here and I'm interested in it, he's going to get me through it, you know? And then
Mhm.
as a team member, no matter where you are in the organization, just having the humility to go, hey, I think I have these skills, but
Mm.
I don't know any. You just asked me to do this thing. I have no clue
Yep.
about how to do that.
Right.
Or I have no
Right.
clue about how. There's just something with that transparency. It does build trust.
Mm.
Okay, because
Mm.
as the leader now, okay, as long as they tell me where they are, honestly, we can deal with whatever.
Yeah. In fact, the only thing that we really can't deal with is when people hide.
Right.
Because
Oh, you
if
said
you
you know how
come,
to do it, but you didn't know how to do it, so it didn't get done, and now I'm in a hole. But if you just would
yes,
have told me you didn't know how to do it, we would have
yes,
gotten you some help, and you would have learned or had a
we can
partner or whatever.
partner, we can partner with you on anything. If,
Right.
as long as you are committed, to the goal we set. But as soon as you start to hide, and as soon as you start to pretend that you are something you're not, or
Yeah.
you're maintaining something that's not really there, then we're in trouble.
Do you do a lot of personality profiling and that kind of thing, or do you
I mean,
just
we try.
yeah?
Yeah, we
And
do.
nothing's perfect. I mean, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, we do. I think there are valuable insights that can be gleaned from, many of those tools.
yeah,
I think the thing that we've been working on most in our business right now is really setting the playing field for trust to exist. And so that means that we structure our meetings a little bit differently. We set norms in our culture where like one that we have right now is we're going to enter the danger. This actually came directly from the table group, which is Pat Lencioni's group, and they challenged us to not hold back. So, when we're in a room with a lot of people and we know we have something on our mind that we need to say, but we're not saying it. If you listen to their podcast at all, they say that politics is changing what you say based on who's in the room. And that is so true. And so, we are encouraging our people to speak openly and honestly, no matter what. Because guess what? Let's just say you're wrong. Let's just say you were bold, you shared something, and it turns out that you learned something new and you were wrong. Guess what comes next? An apology. I'm
right.
sorry, I messed that up. I clearly was wrong, and you get right back on track.
Hey, that's
I mean,
good.
that's
There's really no downside, is your point.
No, that's the
Yeah.
type of culture that, that we want to build. And so we have a section of our leadership meeting we call Under the Table. So it's pretty obvious, we're looking for the things that we should be talking about that we're not because they might be uncomfortable. So we're trying to build the processes into the business that allow the internal, right? The things that we hold back, we want to bring those out. We want to make them external. And so we're doing that through a whole bunch of these little processes that hopefully should help us do that.
I like that. Let me pivot just for a second, because one of the things that is really unique about your position is that you're the CEO of what's a private sort of family-owned business.
For sure. Yeah.
What is that like? What are some of the unique challenges or fun things about that situation?
Yep. Well, first of all, I was given an incredible gift, and Polish Homes has an exceptional reputation in our markets. Historically, we build the best home in the Northwest, and that started in the kind of with the roots of our founder. He was a framer, and as a result, builds just an incredibly solid home. And well, you can imagine that family-run businesses with many owners are challenging and dynamic. And so I would say that the greatest battle that I face is where does the family get involved and where should they not get involved? And um, I'm not saying anything that I think any one owner, at our business wouldn't already know, but that's a challenge because, when there are too many figureheads, too many leaders,
Yeah.
it can really create silos. It can, create turf wars. And that was really our owners and our boards desire was to eliminate that in the business. And so that's when they decided to appoint me. But even today, it is a challenge. And I think we're getting better and better at it. It has to do with, each one of us needs to know our role. What is our role? What does the business need from a CEO? What does the business need from a board member? And then we have to, execute that. And so, that's probably the greatest challenge. But overall, I feel like I'm in the arena a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That quote about the man in the arena is actually one that I go to on a regular basis to find motivation. And it certainly feels bloody at times. But I know that we have great partners, we have great owners that all share the same vision. And even though it's a little bumpy along the way, I think we're winning that battle.
Well, it's been really amazing. Thanks for sharing this journey so openly with us. I know it's going to be a blessing to many
Yeah.
folks. And the way we always try to kind of wrap this up, Matt, is that we just try to leave like a practical tip. And you've left plenty. But as we sort of wrap up here, again, sometimes as we kind of get to the end of these, there's this big arc, and yeah, you've had some setbacks, but you're kind of got the CEO job now, and sometimes maybe that's hard for some people to identify with, and maybe they don't have the resources to buy a full house with their partners and give 750 grand away. But so we always try to leave it with just a practical tip, something that somebody can do tomorrow, or just that's kind of on this journey behind you. What's some practical tip that's coming to mind that you might share with our listeners?
Well, I think I'm going to repeat myself.
Yeah.
It's mainly about the mindset you wake up every day with. And God is a big God, and he has shown me over and over again that we can trust him, even if it means we have to reinvent ourselves, and even if it means that it's not going exactly how we thought it would. And so I think having that learning disposition, the one that follows, the way areas, that follows the way that the Lord leads. And, when you sense a passion that's growing, I think that's the Spirit moving in our heart.
Yeah.
And if we're walking with the Lord, we can follow that. Even if it's new territory. And so being willing to outwork, those around you, I think goes a long ways, as we follow the Lord, on this journey. So
love it. Stay flexible, follow his path. He'll equip you, keep learning, and trust in him and that path he's got for you. I think that's a great way to leave it. So
awesome.
Thanks again, Matt, for joining us today. It's just been a joy to hear your story. And I know, once again, many people will benefit from it. So thanks for joining us, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And I appreciate your work. This podcast is awesome.
Hey, thank you. And thanks everybody for listening. Feel free to sign up on our YouTube channel and on generousbusinessowner.com for our newsletter, and share it with a friend, and leave us your rating and reviews. And we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Generous Business Owner Podcast with Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can find the guest contact information in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.